want to tell you about a relationship that I stayed in for 3 years. Not because it was the great love of my life, and not because I was madly in love and couldn't imagine my love without him, but because there were good things about it. Real things. Things I hadn't had in a long time. And I held on to those things way longer than I should have, while ignoring a lot of things that were telling me to end it. That's what staying too long usually looks like from the inside. It's not dramatic or always obvious, just comfortable enough to stay and not quite enough to leave. So let's talk about that today because I think most of us have done it and too many of us don't talk about it honestly. He was retired military, so for the most part, he liked routine and liked to make decisions. And after years of being a single mom, doing absolutely everything alone, making every decision, managing every crisis, being the only adult in the house, having someone who just took charge, honestly, felt good. From Friday after work until Sunday afternoon, I didn't have to do too much of anything. He cooked for me. I wasn't even allowed in the kitchen, mostly because it was too small. Nobody had done that. He planned vacations, real vacations, to places I couldn't afford to take myself because I didn't have child support and was always living check to check. For the first time in a long time, I felt taken care of. Those things were real and they mattered. And I want to be honest about that because I think we do ourselves a disservice when we pretend we stayed in the wrong relationship for purely noble reasons. But sometimes we stay because it's comfortable, because the perks are legit, because starting over sounds exhausting. And after everything I'd been through, honestly, I was tired. He had told me early on, when I figured it out on our second date, actually, that he had quit smoking over 20 years before, but started again after his wife passed away 2 years before we had met. He said he was going to quit. And that conversation is part of why I kept seeing him, but he never quit. He wasn't interested in doing things that were important to me, even though I showed up for everything that mattered to him. He didn't have a good relationship with his family, and he wasn't a decent communicator. And when I tried to eat healthier and spoke up about what I needed because I was trying to lose weight, he wasn't super supportive. Maybe for a week, but then it was back to normal the next week. There were a lot of times I thought about ending it, and I didn't because I liked somebody cooking for me. And even though I loved my road trips with my kids during winter breaks to go visit my parents, I loved going on real vacations. Somebody actually once told me that going away without children is a vacation. With children, it's called a trip. And I actually really like that one. It always makes me laugh. And it felt good not being the only one making decisions. I'm not super proud of that, but it is the truth. And I think a lot of women can relate. The relationship ended the way it did. And I want to tell you this story because I think it says everything. We had just gotten back from vacation. Before he left, he had talked about calling his nephew, someone he hadn't spent time with in a long time. And he really wanted to spend time with him. At least that's what he told me. He still had a week left of vacation when we got home. So that afternoon, I asked him about it. Just simple, did you call your nephew? And he said he hadn't done it yet. And I said something like, I thought you said it was important to you. How come you didn't call? Plain and simple, I thought. I never heard from him again. That was it. 3 years. And that was how it ended. No conversation, no goodbye, just complete silence. Ghosted. And I want to be clear about something. I was not surprised that he couldn't have that conversation. That was completely consistent with who he was, someone who avoided difficult conversations. What shocked me, I guess, was that a 55-year-old man chose to end a 3-year relationship that way. The immaturity of that shocked me. The exit didn't. And here's the most honest thing I can tell you about how I felt when it ended. I wasn't devastated. After 3 years, I wasn't devastated. I wasn't super upset. As a matter of fact, my boss at the time was more upset than I was. And that told me everything I needed to know about how wrong it had been for a long time and how long I had been staying for the wrong reasons. So, why do we stay? Why do smart women stay in relationships that they already know aren't right? So, here are a few things that I know from my own experience and from working with other women. First, hope. We hold on to who he was in the beginning or who we believed he could be. We remember the good version and we tell ourselves that version is going to come back. It's not denial, it's loyalty that we give to the wrong person. Then there's the investment we've already made. When you've given 2 or 3 years of your life to something, walking away feels like losing everything that you put into it. So you put in a little more and a little more, trying to make the investment worth it. But here's what I want you to hear. The time you've already spent is gone, whether you stay or leave. The only question is whether you're going to spend more. Okay, the next one, fear of failure. Especially after a divorce, the last thing you want is another relationship that didn't work. So you stay longer than you should trying to make it work because leaving feels like admitting defeat. It's not, even though it feels that way. And then, like I talked about at the beginning, the perks are real. And I say this because I think we need to be honest about it. Sometimes we may stay because someone is cooking dinner and planning vacations and making us feel taken care of. And after years of doing everything alone, that does matter. Even when the relationship isn't right, even when you know it, the comfort is real. The relief is real. And leaving means giving that up and starting over again. None of these reasons make you weak. They make you human. But they are worth looking at honestly, because until you see why you're staying, you can't make a clear decision about whether to go. And that awareness will help you if you ever find yourself in a situation like that again. One of the most expensive stories we tell ourselves in relationships is, I can fix this. If I just communicate better, if I just give it more time, if I just love him more, if I just stop bringing up the smoking, maybe he'll quit on his own. I told myself versions of that story for about half of those 3 years. And every time I considered leaving, something good would happen. And I would tell myself, see, it's not that bad. Maybe it'll be okay. Ever do that before? That is what hope looks like when it's working against you. Not stupidity, not weakness, just a very human tendency to focus on what's good and minimize what's not, especially when leaving feels hard. Here's something I learned when I was in direct sales with women on my team that I could have applied to this relationship. You cannot want someone's growth more than they want it for themselves. You cannot fix what someone isn't willing to look at. And staying longer in hopes that something will change when the evidence keeps telling you it won't, that isn't loyalty. That's hoping against what you already know. So now let's talk about what staying too long actually costs you. Because I think we focus too much on what leaving costs us that we forget to count what staying costs us too. It costs you time you can't get back. Every month you stay in the wrong relationship is a month you are not available for the right person. And that's not being dramatic, that's a reality. It also costs you energy. The mental and emotional energy of managing a relationship that isn't right is huge. Even when nothing dramatic is happening, there's a low hum of something not being quite right that takes up space in your head. It also costs you yourself. When you are in a relationship that doesn't support who you're trying to become, that isn't curious about your growth, that isn't supportive of the things that matter to you, you start to shrink slowly, quietly, in ways you might not even notice until you're out. I lost over 100 pounds at one point in my life, and the relationship I was in at the time wasn't supportive of that. When I spoke up about needing to eat differently, it didn't stick. And eventually, I stopped speaking up, which was totally on me. I totally own that. And I gained a lot of that weight back, which I eventually lost again after working through being pissed off at myself. That is what staying in the wrong relationship can cost you. Not in a dramatic way necessarily, but in the quiet, slow way where you don't notice until one day when you look up and wonder how you got there. So, how do you know when it's actually time to leave? Well, here are some other things that I learned. When you're not upset that it ended, that's information. When the relief is bigger than your grief, that's your gut telling you something's been trying to tell you all the while. When you've said the same thing more than twice and nothing has changed, that's a pattern, not a rough patch, so it's something to pay attention to. When you're staying for the perks rather than the person, be honest with yourself about that. The cooking and the vacations are real, but they are not a relationship, and you deserve an actual relationship. When leaving feels scary, but staying feels like you're slowly disappearing, trust that. The fear of leaving is almost always about the unknown, about what's on the other side of the relationship. But what staying is doing to you is about who you're becoming or not becoming inside of that relationship. And when you do leave, make sure you leave with grace, not because he deserves it, but because you do. How you leave a relationship says something about who you are. Like I always taught my kids, you're the one who always has to look in the mirror, not me. So you can be honest, you can be clear, and you can be done. And you can still be kind. If you're sitting with any of this right now, if you're in something and you're not sure whether to stay or go, or if you've left something and are still making sense of all of it, I want you to know that you don't have to figure it all out alone. The Becoming Her Sisterhood, my new community, is opening in a few more days. It's a community for women over 50 who are doing this kind of work, the real work of understanding their patterns and trusting themselves and building the kind of love they actually deserve. The waitlist is in the comments, and I would love to have you there. And if you want to start somewhere right now, type guide in the comments for my free guide, 5 Lies Over 50, 5 Lies Women Over 50 Believe About Love, and the Truth That Changes Everything. It's a really good place to start. And remember, you didn't stay because something was wrong with you. You stayed because you loved, or because you were tired, or because the comfort was real, or because leaving felt like failure and you'd already had enough of those. You stayed because leaving is hard, and because hope is a beautiful thing, even when it's pointed in the wrong direction. If I can leave you with one thing today, is this. Leaving the wrong relationship is not giving up. It is not failure. It is not proof that you can't make things work. Leaving is choosing yourself, and you are absolutely allowed to do that. And you are absolutely worth it. Next week, we're talking about why emotionally unavailable men are feeling so familiar, and why the ones who are open and consistent can feel almost unsettling. If you've ever felt more drawn to someone who kept you guessing than someone who just showed up, that one's for you. And if this video helped you, please subscribe. Every week on this channel, we talk about real love, real growth, and what it takes to create the relationship you deserve. Because your best relationship starts with you. I'll see you next week.